And actually, you know what? I think we'll do Tai Chi tonight. Let's see what happens. We'll at least start with a warm up with no stick. Something like that. Right. Yeah? Cool. Alright, just in time. Because I want to address something actually we do in the stick class, but there's a Tai Chi concept. So let's actually let me do one thing first. Okay, let's actually start. So allow your feet to touch, bring your head top to the highest point, relax your shoulders, relax your hips, bring your hands together in the center. And do a calibration. So pull the head top up and activate your feet. Connect the tongue to the upper palate and then take a deep breath. Relax. Let's do a little bit of breathing. So when we do this breathing, stretch your whole torso like you're stretching your spine, and then press the heel of your palms all the way up. I'm leaving my hands flat. So I'm reaching, so you can see my hands all the way up. And then reaching out to the side. Go at your own pace. And just to make things very easy for the breathing strategy, think of when we're inhaling that everything is going up. And then when we're exhaling, everything is relaxed. So on the inhale, we're arching the foot. We're lifting the bottom. We're pulling energy up through the center line. We're turning the palms up, and we're sending our energy up as well. And then on the exhale, all of those things, we want to keep the shape inside the foot, but we're not pulling. The same thing, the center, we want to keep the shape, but we're not lifting. And the same thing with the energy, we want to keep the shape in the center without and so stretch when you reach the top. And use the shape for the breathing, so when you reach, as if you're pulling your shoulders up and away from the torso, so that the lungs can open sideways and expand up and out. And on the exhale, you don't even have to exhale if that's how you're breathing. When you close this, the shoulder structure sits over top of the torso this way. So when it comes down, it will force the exhale on its own. And so the same thing, grip your feet, pull the arch, lift the base of the torso. And then remember the hands and the vision working together. So when we're pressing upward, looking all the way up to the zenith, to the highest point. Keep the tongue connected to the upper palate. And try to make it even more relaxed on the way down. So we see a distinct dichotomy between the stretch, which is also relaxed, and the sinking, which is even more relaxed. How can a stretch be relaxed? When you pull on the edges of a balloon, does the balloon have tension? The surface may have tension, but does the balloon itself have tension? Do 3 more long breathing at your own pace. And then when you finish, bring everything back to the center. And so while we stand in this posture, this is probably the posture we've talked about the most. We have some ideas about what's supposed to be happening inside of the body. But do something. Instead of thinking about what should be happening inside the body, do something different. Just move your mind into the dantian. When you do, you'll feel an adjustment. And then imagine like a seed or a plant. Once the seed goes into the ground, the first thing it does is it sends up an antenna to try to get to the sunlight. So the same thing, imagine if you put your mind into the center, that this becomes like where your chi is, like the seed, and then allow it to sink. So relax your tailbone like sitting, so that the energy is sitting. And then directly up the center line. Don't think about the spine, don't think about the anatomy, but it's a feeling. And then keep your feet activated and then moving. So sink your dantian even more, and we're just shifting. You can imagine, sometimes I talk about a circle, sometimes I talk about a square, is whether you hit 4 corners of the square or whether your torso, your belt line here, is turning in a circle. And close your eyes part way, haze your vision, so that almost as if you're doing the squint test, so you can forget about any of that. And feel the energy in the dantian. And then while you're turning in the circle, distinctly feel your head top at the other end of that, like a pole. Keep working, keep breathing. So grip your feet, and then as if it's one piece. We just got done talking about keeping the mind in the dantian, but now imagine your body just one piece. If you can imagine a tree, bamboo, palm, blade of grass. There's just one you, and there's one center, which is here. And so turn to see if you can hit all the points on the circle. So turning my center line. So relax your tailbone, relax your shoulders. Keep the tongue connected to the upper palate. And we return to natural breathing. So while I'm turning, you may feel the weight change around the base of the feet, especially if the tailbone is relaxed and sunk. If you haven't changed directions or are changing directions, try some of that. Relax your shoulders. Keep your neck straight. And then come back to the center. In fact, allow everything to settle back into the center on its own. Keeping the mind in the Dantian. Where the mind goes, the chi follows. Take a deep breath. Relax. We're going to do, I think we'll do some Tai Chi tonight instead of a stick. Let's warm up just a little bit. So starting from the head top, make your feet shoulder width wide, comfortably stationed, and then keeping your shoulders in place, turning. And so the analogy that I've been using recently is like reaching, as if you're extending your hand. If you want to reach towards something, you stretch. So like you're holding your shoulders back and you want to extend your head top in a circle without moving your shoulders. Head suspension power. We can think of it as neck extending power, but while you're turning, feel like it's pushing in the normal direction. And then when you come back to the center, relax your hands, and then the same thing, without restraining your shoulders, turning. Keep your feet rooted, almost like the exercise we just did a second ago. But now we're extending, I'm pushing up as if someone or something is pulling from the top, or you can think of it as pushing from the inside, turning the circle. If you have, relax your shoulders if you haven't already changed directions. And you can increase the stretch by adding a little bit of power to the tongue. So as if the power that's going up through the back of the neck and the power that's going up through the surface of the tongue are working in parallel together to keep everything straight, but keep your shoulders relaxed. And this is long breathing. If you haven't changed directions, change directions. And when you come back to the center, bring your feet together and then bring your hands together in the center. And then one more time, put your mind into the Dantian. Everything will line it up naturally on its own. Relax your shoulders. So we can think of this exercise, some of these exercises, like the spine being like a chain, whether you envision something like a delicate jewelry or something heavy like a chain from a ship, but that's old and the stuff is all stuck together and gunked up. So when we do this kind of turning with the spine, keeping the tongue connected straight. So working our way down, we just did head and neck. Next, we're going to do something for the shoulders, and this is one of the focus for the class tonight is going to be for Jing, which is power, releasing power, and the purpose for Tai Chi. Let's do some breathing while we talk. is, what's the purpose of Tai Chi? Is cultivating some type of power. And there's three concepts, three treasures in some philosophies. And the one says Qi, Jing, and Shen. And so this is one thing that we cultivate as a Qi, is energy. So when you breathe in, you're breathing in oxygen. Oxygen itself has potential. And when you do the kind of gentle movement that we're doing, this also generating a kind of energy. And then in the idea of Qi, Jing, and Shen, Jing, once we have a high level of Qi, this energy can actually condense, can form into something. So imagine if you have air and it seems like there's nothing there, but even inside the air there's particles of water. And if enough of those particles of water get together in one place, they form a drop. And so this is the idea of converting your energy into something more substantial. So this is referred to as Jing. And so the Jing is anything that our body produces that's valuable, that's not waste. So when you keep your tongue to the upper palate, your mouth feels watery, you feel saliva. Saliva is a Jing. Blood is considered the primal Jing, right? The primal thing that's converted from energy into substance. And so you can see how this becomes the way that the body repairs itself, is turning energy into something. And then if we have a lot of energy and our body is functioning the right way, all of the 5,000 chemicals that your liver produces, that's all considered Jing. So if you have a high level of Qi, your liver can function the right way. And when your liver functions the right way, and your stomach and your lungs and your heart and everything else functions the right way, then you can start to cultivate Shen. And Shen, sometimes translated as soul, spirit, a ghost in the machine. So if you have energy and your body is healthy, then you can cultivate your spiritual self. So the reason we're talking about this, we're doing Qigong, we're doing Tai Chi. And so we have a focus, we have a goal to be able to heal our bodies and to keep our organs very healthy. At the base level, before we get into the idea of cultivating Jing, we're going to talk about a different kind of Jing, which is Fa Jing. We can take the Qi, and instead of internalizing the Qi and processing it, storing it in the energy centers or in the organs or different places, we can take the Jing and expel it outwards. Fa Jing, right? This kind of power that goes out. And a lot of times people thinking about Fa Jing for boxing technique, but we can also use this kind of Fa Jing for healing. And tonight we're going to talk about how to improve ourselves by turning the Qi into Fa Jing. And then we're going to talk about how to make that very effective so we don't have to waste a lot of energy. And this is, by the way, this is the reason we practice Tai Chi, is because everyone here likes Kung Fu, likes martial arts, boxing, likes to make a dynamic movement. So why don't we practice our Tai Chi with a full speed, with high power all the time? Because it costs us. It's not efficient, right? It costs us energy, it costs us something, we lose something. So if we practice slowly enough, we can take that power that we might have spent in doing the boxing technique, and we simply internalizing it. Tai Chi from the outside may look soft, but I can turn with torque, with power on the inside and cultivate my martial art. So let's go to the next exercise in doing tonight's sort of warm-up. Is we're going to practice Fa Jing. So this is this kind of pressing with the heel of the palm, breathing like you're gathering energy to the center, and then turning and pressing the palms straight down to the front. You see my elbows are in the front, and I want to keep my neck straight. So we're going to go slow. So turning the arms like you're holding the ball, and then turning and pressing down. You can let the tailbone relax. This is, make sure everything is level. Keep the neck straight. So breathing, turn the palms, and press. And so adding a little bit more power, and there's a vibration. And so once this reaches its extent, there's a shock wave that sort of hits it, bounces, and it comes back. You'll feel it. So I want you to practice slowly at first, just adding a little bit of power. Allow gravity to do its thing. Keep your shoulders, keep your head top up. And by the way, one very important detail is we don't want the vibration to travel back up into the head top. This can give you a headache, cause excessive chi in the top. So the way to prevent that is to keep the head top floating, right? The same way when you see birds when they walk, right? Or some like owls and stuff, you can turn their bodies and their head tops always looking this way. The same thing. Keep this floating like the top of a compass, always floating on top and pointing in the right direction is north. The head top always, so that the energy doesn't go up the spine. So breathing and press. We may have done this. I've done this in the Westwood classes, in the Malibu classes. So breathing, press. You can time it with the breath. And imagine that there's a drum, a large drum. You can, and that you want to press flat right to the surface of the drum, and that you want to hit it with a little bit of power. So breathing, create the circle, and then when the hands come in, going down to press. And this is, you may feel this in your collarbones, all of this area. We want to feel that area become loose and relaxed, so it shouldn't feel painful. And then we're going to increase the speed. You don't have to use more power, but keeping the hands just in the front now at this point, press. So like drumming, pressing onto the heel of the hand, right? This kind of shocking press, power. And the vibration, the recoil, you can actually see the hair vibrating. And then we can add one more thing. If we keep the spine straight, we're going to add a vertical, as if the bouncing is ending in the heel press of the hand. And you'll feel your shoulders, your arms, all of this opening up. And this kind of vibration, by the way, is the same kind of vibration we can use for Tai Chi when we want to press to the opponent's structure somewhere. So this is, instead of doing shoulder rolls, something like this, doing this kind of pressing with the vibration. And next, since this is kind of a different kind of class, if you look at your hand, right, we have something in the Chinese martial arts, this shape here, this L shape, is called hukou, tiger's mouth, right? And in martial arts it's important, but also in Chinese medicine, this corner here is where the lungs and large intestine meridians, both of them run along this section here. And so You may have seen people say, oh, if you get a headache, you can massage this webbing. If you take the space between here, this L shape, and go in there and do a little bit of massage on it, maybe a little bit sore. Use as much power as you can stand. Try some on the other side. And while working on the hands, we're going to talk more about Jing and multiple impacts. So this bone, the first bone on the hand right here, we have the finger, and then there's a metacarpal bone right here. If we take this and hitting first the pinky, and then the ring finger, the middle finger, index, and then lastly the thumb. So I'm going to try to hit my pinky right along the surface of that bone, not in the wedge, right? People get lazy and they just start hitting in the wedge, but we're hitting along the surface of the bone and then using all 5 fingers to create if I do it in slow motion, it's hit 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And trying to stay in line with that bone as accurate as you can. You can look down. And this, by the way, just right in front of the center so that we're not changing our structure. It may take a minute to feel the coordination. You can work up and down the length of the bone as long as you keep it parallel so that the pinky is hitting along the line that way. Try some on the other side. If you're left-handed or right-handed or use one hand more, it may feel easier. Same thing, and try to do some slower. If you can hear, you should get this overlapping kind of rap, rap, rap sound that comes off of it. And so this one serves multiple purposes. That bone is for ECIWO, acupuncture is considered the bone that you work on for yourself, just doing massage along that bone. And this exercise, we're using that concept, but we're combining it with power. So the power is this very basic, my elbow, my wrist, and then from there my fingertips. And also the fingertips, there's a lot of acupuncture points and meridians that sort of travel a lot of times starting where the corners of the nails are, right? And so this kind of hitting this way can also do some tuning on the energy at the tips of the fingertips. So we've talked about this pressing and we've talked about this hitting here. Next, just turning around the center. So the same thing, I want you to imagine your spine as the chain, whether you like to cultivate, keep working, keep turning, whatever kind of chain that you like to envision, imagine that by pulling the top of it up and the bottom of it down and then gently turning around the center, loosening the whole thing. Use your abs to support and let your arms relax, let your shoulders relax. Like the chi is traveling out through your fingertips. So like the first exercise that we started with, keep working, keep turning, keep your shoulders, don't allow them to rise up, keep them sunk, and push up through the back of the neck, like extending the chain. You can relax the legs, almost like sitting. And for this one, while we're doing this one, whether it's on the front or on the back, I want you to allow the same way that we have a multiple impact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This, have your elbow, and then your forearm, and then your wrist, and then your hand. You can have the heel of the hand, and then the palm, and then the base of the fingertips, and then the fingertips. So there's a multiple striking happening at the same time. All we're doing is turning the spine. My arms are completely relaxed as if it's jello. And so imagine if your arms were made of jello, there's no tendons to pull the arm, so you're just turning the center. But once we do that, we can kind of steer it. And so it's a feeling less than a control. We don't want to have control of it. You just want to, like somebody practicing a skill, the ring toss or shooting a bow and arrow. The same thing, this is steering the arm so that the elbow, you can even start with the upper arm, then elbow, then get as many hits out of the impact as you can. All the while, keep your back open, breathing deep. And then come back to the center. Let's do just a little bit of grip your feet, bend your tailbone, relax your shoulders, head and neck. Just fold yourself in half. Really let your head and neck go. Sometimes the inclination is to look up. If your fingertips hit the ground, that's great. Remember to breathe. Let gravity do the stretch for you. Pull your tailbone up towards the ceiling. And when you're ready, grip your feet. Activate your toes, the lower body, lock yourself into place, and inflate all the way. Imagine your lungs opening at the top by expanding all the way up. Let the energy normalize and relax. Come back to the center. And then we're just going to stretch the legs just a little bit. So grip one side, extend, push the tailbone back and away. Do a little bit of stretching. You can balance if you need. This one isn't about the balance, so you can hold on to the wall. This one is about stretching. So turn the toe upwards. Either extend your chin or extend the head top. Breathing deep, reach forward. And then pushing up. Change to the other side, grip the ground, push the tailbone back and away. Reach forward. It's your stretch, so do as much as you can. Being sore is okay, pain is being too much. Breathing, step up, come back to the center. So what we're talking about today is, and this is we can go over any questions if you guys want to talk about the stick in a little bit. I want to do a Tai Chi class about multiple impacts because we have a transition from the first and second section, second to third section, where we have very, very clear the purpose of the movement is to demonstrate multiple impacts. And then we have some other postures, like in the second section, where the multiple impacts may be a little bit more obscured. And why is this important? Is because we want to talk about efficiency. We want to do as little effort as we can to win or to accomplish the goal. And if we just press something one time, it may not be as effective. We may have an exponential effect by adding more power behind it. So right from where you're standing, if you take a square step, whichever direction you face, doesn't matter, relax your tailbone, and you turn your arm this way, just like you're holding this round shape. And I have my right foot in front and my left foot in the back of the square. My center line is about in the center of my square here. My right arm is in the front. And if I just turn this way, just turning. So like I'm holding onto, we said beach ball, you can think of a barrel, you can think of pillar or a tree, but you have this circular shape, right? And you can fill that negative space with chi, with energy, so that it supports itself on its own. And then if you take your other hand, like there's something on there and you want to brush it off, like wipe it off. And with that, you can apply some pressure. So like you're pulling this way, right? And then if we turn, so the pull, like whatever's on the arm, while I'm smearing, I'm also turning my waist, but I'm not collapsing my shape. We might do that later, but right now, we're just gonna keep I want you to keep actually pressing outwards with your right arm while your left arm is pulling inwards. So, like you have this, if you just standing straight, and you have this, so one side is trying to pull in, and the other side is trying to push out, and you end up with, I don't know if you can see this round circular shape here, this way, right? This is a strong structural shape. We can use it to, right, without a lot of power. Imagine somebody or something is pushing you, and all you need is the power to keep your arm away from yourself, to keep that distance. That's not a lot of power, right? That's a minimal amount of power. And so now the same thing, we're going to turn the waist, but we're going to still look in that direction. In fact, when we turn, I want to keep my elbow and my shoulder sort of weaponized, so that when I am turning, if I turn too much or I get pressed, right, I have a place where I can hit with my shoulder, with my elbow, or coming up from the elbow this way. So if I'm facing the camera, if my square is facing this way, I don't know what it looks like, but they're parallel, right, here, and I have my right arm is round, and I turn my waist, but I'm still looking forward towards the camera when this is here. And then when it comes back, I'm pressing right to the center. You see my index finger and my middle finger are on my center line. And then this other hand, which is here, is now also coming back to press this way. So,
I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, I sort of know the answer, but I don't understand exactly why the answer is what it is. If you're feeling the center line in the center of your body, and then you make this conscious effort to bring the energy out in front of you in this ball in front of you, does that change your center line at all if you were like projecting energy into the space in front of you?
Okay, sure. Think of this like a tree, right? The tree always has the root in the ground and the trunk that comes up. And how it unfolds the leaves, tree might have very big top up here. So the strong energy in the core, right? Like a building, like a fancy architect can put rebar into the center, the steel post into the middle, and then support, cantilevers and all sorts of structural things out here, because the center is strong. So think of it like a crane, also like a crane, right? When you see building, when they build the skyscrapers, right? Rascacielos is a great word in Spanish for skyscrapers. It means sky tickler, right? Is rascacielos. They have a crane that comes up the center and outside can carry a very heavy load because this is so strong, right? If this wasn't so strong here, this might fall this way. So, and then ultimately, we want to use the whole body together as one piece. So imagine if I made this kind of shape and somebody froze me in carbonite, somebody turned me into a steel structure, and you could tilt me around this way, right? It would be very stable. It should be a very strong shape. Even imagine if you see a structure, a sculpture made out of metal, and you go to press on it, it's solid, right? So ultimately, we want to use the whole thing. Yeah, question, continue, go ahead.
The idea is that the center line is so strong and so sturdy that, because when you were starting with the tree analogy, I was thinking, well, but trees typically develop all the way around. They don't develop just projecting out to the front or out to the back. They get kind of locked lopsided with time. But you're saying that center core is so sturdy, it doesn't really matter whether you're projecting to the front or the back.
Well, yeah, okay, so, and then in addition to that, like, this is part of Tai Chi is getting the balance. So, by focusing on that center line, if I have this, what seems like, this is why I'm saying fill this area with Qi, so that this out here doesn't have to weigh as much, doesn't have to have this kind of weight. It can be a tree. If we put a tree into the ground, and if you go to a park or somewhere where it's open, if you have an enclosed space, like out behind my place, there's some trees, and there's power lines that grow there, and there's some bamboos that grow there, and so they have to kind of grow in a certain way. Well, this is one of the reasons we practice Tai Chi, is to grow into the best shape that our DNA can produce for us, right? And so by eliminating stuff like stress and tension inside the body, then the shape can expand and become into its correct fullness. So the center line, whether we temporarily facing an opponent have to push our center line back and keep this thing out here, we can return back to being vertical, being into the correct shape. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, the center line is pretty much everything. If we remember, going back, we're studying a Chinese martial art, the Chinese culture, the Chinese philosophy. Let me get something that I can write with. The name for their country is Zhonghua, and the character, I'll just use a post-it note, looks like this. How many have seen that, right? You can think of it as a center line with a circle around it. This is the shape of many, many things. The person, right? We have a center line, and we have a belt meridian, we have energy that travels in this way. So you can think of that very center line with this circle. We always talk about, you hear me talk about the circular shape. Always make sure you're doing the Tai Chi symbol when you're practicing. This is always round, is because it goes back to what we just looked at, that symbol, right? This is the core of, they believe the center line, having it as straight as it can be is the valuable thing. When you practice Chinese calligraphy, you hold the brush, it's vertical. When we practice the sword, right, the sword form, we want to keep the sword, when it's vertical, it's vertical. When it's horizontal, it's perfectly horizontal. So this center line is, and then also think of it just from if we remove any other idea, from the sense of balance, the more accurately you can line up your center, the less effort it takes to balance something. So imagine you have something that you want to balance that's not very straight, that has some bends in it, right? This is probably pretty straight comparatively, but if we take something that is very, very straight, right, and we try to balance it, it's much easier, right? It should be anyway. So the same with our structure. Once we work out where the tailbone should be and where the head top should be and how the shoulders, because those few things determine how good the center line is, right? And this has to do with how much energy, when we talk about the leg strength, to carry the spine where it needs to go. This is the basis for X-stepping, for Tai Chi stepping. So practice keeping your center line as straight as you can, and then supporting underneath it, grip the ground. And whether you like to think about the straighter it is, the easier it is to balance, the less effort you need with your hands. Let's go back to multiple impacts. My center line, by the way, for Ru Feng Sibi, this is what we're working on, is turning. Is if I keep this circle and I turn and pressing once and then pressing twice. So the transition happening after we have Ban Lan Shui, the punch, and then Ru Feng. So when we're starting, we can keep the circle. Later, when we're playing push hands with somebody, if I get twisted this way, I may actually close that circle to allow myself some space to escape, right? But in general, when we're practicing the form, we want to keep that round shape. And it shouldn't cost us anything from our center line. It shouldn't take anything away from our center line or force us to like exert energy or lose chi. The same way a tree itself, the center line may even become supported by the branches on the outside. So this circular shape out here, if the structure is right, the weight and the chi is pouring down into the center, this hand can float here on its own as much as it needs. And then I'm just turning the waist. I'm still looking, because if my opponent is in the center and it's here, I'm playing push hands or twisto, something like this, and the power is here, and I get pressed. When I turn, if I want to take their hands and press them off to the side, I still want to face my opponent, because they may charge in, right? They may start to retreat, and I can press forward, turn, and then press once, and then the other one is pressed twice. And so this is what we're getting at here is this turn, press, press, multiple impacts, hit, hit. What we were talking about is, someone was asking me a question about massage, especially for where you have tissue that's if everyone take your hand and reach up over your shoulder, where there's tissue that has been become hardened with time, right? That type of tissue, we may just want to hit it, right? But if you can take your hand and do the thing that we were talking about earlier, it can be light. You don't have to get a full power out of it, right? If you want more power, you can use like a beak fist. Like when we do hook, this kind of diao show ends up with all 5 fingers. You can hit with that kind of thing too, like a meat tenderizer. And we use multiple hits, right? You can hear my voice vibrating from that kind of hit. So this, we can see like a repetition of power into the same place. This is what we use for drilling a nail. This is what they use for when they want to drill. We have a subway system going into Los Angeles somehow. So when we're using for martial arts, hitting in the same place is for martial art very powerful technique, because we don't need to use a lot of power. The first hit disrupts the structure, right? Maybe the person has a good technique. They have some type of iron shirt, right? And they can withstand an impact. And so the first hit hits there, and like a lake or a ripple in a water, it goes out. And so they can disperse that power, right? They can diffuse the energy as it comes in. It doesn't matter. You can hit them. They don't care. Some guys will take hits. They don't care. They can do that. But then if you can hit that in the same exact place before the gap can close, before the energy can recongeal, right? And we had just talked about some science fiction stuff. So if you hit the force shields, right, and there's a disruption, if you can get a second one in behind it, that's where there's real danger. And so for the danger for the opponent. And so this kind of hit, the first one, sets up the attack for the other hit. And by the way, this kind of idea of doubling the frequency rapidly, we see just plain old in the out open in our in the sort of bagua when we say double press, shuang an, right? This movement, if we just do a regular press, we want to use the whole body, and we can think of a very basic circle, either coming in from over the top or coming in from underneath and doing a push, right? This, if you just want to practice some Tai Chi Qigong, you can just practice your push just like this, just like turning a circle. Use your whole body, grip your feet, make the arch, breathing deep. And then we have, so after look left and glance right, we have shuang an, which is not just the circle, it comes up, and then there's another little one. And this is the idea for Shuang An, for Rad and anybody else that's following along at home that hasn't heard this teaching before. I know some of you experienced people have heard this. So look left, glance right. Shuang An is push, push. So it's a double push. Imagine, my teacher was really funny, he would say something like this. Imagine a refrigerator, and imagine it's filled with your favorite food, right? You can fill it with anything that you want, top to bottom, and you can put in your favorite beverage, you can put in your favorite food, whatever, but it's heavy because it's full of the thing, right? And so if you want to push a fridge that's completely packed from top to bottom, if you just try to push it, it may not move. And so to get something like that moving, or if you have to push a car, a very big car, is the idea of rocking it. You push it once, and then you push it again, and the second time it's easier to move. And in the Taiji form, this kind of Shuang An is designed to trick the balance sensors of our opponent, but we can use it around, like I said, if we need to move something around the house, something very heavy, we can use the same principle. Let's practice Shuang An. So in the form, coming after look left, glance right, we're getting underneath the energy. So I make this round shape, just like we're holding the ball, and then like I'm pressing up and pressing forward. But if we're playing push hands, Shuang An, double press, is the idea is I want to press up, so I'm putting my power going up first, and then down second, and then back up. So it forms, it looks like a cartoon stock exchange. It goes up, down, up. Again, using all of the same Tai Chi principles, pushing up first, and then down, and then back up. And again, you see my hands, we don't want to go outside of the box, outside of the square. We don't want to reach this way, because this is where, maybe going back to Charlotte's ideas about the center line, is if my arm, if it's within my square, it's safe. Once it goes outside of my square, the opponent has a handle, which is very easy for them to pull me off of my route. But when it's still within my square, if my opponent wants to pull on this, if they want to pull on my arm this way, you see what's happening down here? They have to, because my center line is connected between those 2 points, my foot and my hand. So if they want to pull that, and maybe at some point I change and I move forward to do something like that. So, pushing, Shuang An, right, is gather the power, scoop up, and then pushing down and pushing up. I will actually use the drawing thing again because it's kind of a funny thing like this, just like exactly like a cartoon stock exchange. Right? It goes up, down, up. And what's the purpose? For pushing an opponent, for push hands, right? Is if we push up on an opponent, right? If somebody takes your torso or connects to anywhere where they can get a grip and they push up, right? If we're pushing up on the opponent, we'll be uprooted. And so what do? We sink, right? So as they're pushing up, the opponent sinks. They want to drop their weight. So we try to push them up and away, and they root. Okay, so then we push down. And what happens when someone pushes down on us? We don't want to get pushed down and get pushed out, right? So the first thing we do is we bolster against them in that direction. So as they push down, whether they're pushing on our sternum, into our gut, into our hips, onto our legs, when we're getting pushed down, we want to bolster up so that we don't get pushed out that way. And so as they bolster up, we change directions again, and we can very easily lift them up and out of the way. So this is double press, Shuang An. And by the way, this is very natural. You have some fluid in your ear that tries to maintain a balance. And so automatically when someone pushes up, we buckle down. And then when they push down, we push up. And because our energy is already rising, we just help them off their feet. So you can practice when you have push hand stuff. So this is scooping under the energy getting underneath their mass to lift up, and then pressing down, and then pressing up. You can also think of this very basically like the EEG. It goes boop, it goes up, down, up. The same thing, up, down, up. And by the way, this has a whole set of push hands techniques codified in just one movement, right? So because we can use this upper left, lower right, upper left, this zigzag, and then in addition to that, we don't have to stay on a straight line. It can start to spiral in different angles. So, but we just call the whole technique, all of this ball of wax is condensed down, and we call it Schwung on double press. So up, down, up. Because you could use very easily, if you have an opponent, and you can shake your opponent, shake right, shake left, shake right, and as they each time go to resist, just like a tic-tac-toe, you lead them into the corner. So we push up, down, up is one of the most easy to understand. What's another one with multiple impacts? It's time, but let's do just shoulder bump from the second section. Once we've done needle at the bottom of the C, right, we have shoulder bump and diagonal flying. And so this is from multiple impacts. We can say hip, shoulder, and then upper arm, lower arm, and into the hand, right? So this kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Hitting with the, you can even hit with the thigh, then hip, then shoulder, then arm, this. So all over the place, if we go back to the very beginning, the very basic exercise, doing this thing, contains many, many ideas, and we can use the multiple impacts for not only, like we said, martial arts. First, compromise the structure, get a vibration moving through it, and then follow behind. By the way, if you're using that for boxing technique, hitting twice in the same spot, be very careful. You can damage the internal organs, and where it can be very dangerous. So press, this type of shock wave. But we can use it the same way to give yourself a micro massage in this way, or macro. Just keep putting power into the same place, just like a hammer, knocking away into place where we want to do the thing. And the more overlap, the more that we can get impact. This later will turn into a stick technique, because there's something that we can have happen where when we're doing something, the hitting like a rebound, right? Just like we were doing earlier with this one, allowing the structure to rebound the arms and allowing the arms to rebound off this way. We can have the stick by having it relaxed, like have a vibrational rebound that continues to travel. Bring everything back to the center. Before we end, does anyone have questions, thoughts, comments? It's actually past 8:30, so if you gotta go, it's time. Allow your feet to touch. Push your head top up. Relax your shoulders. Relax your tailbone. Bring your hands together in the center. And then move your mind into the Dantian. Breathing deep. Check to see that the tongue is connected to the upper palate. Relax your face. And then looking to the inside. Breathing into your center. Take a second to smile at yourself. One long last deep breath. And that's it. If you do have questions, if something new comes up, feel free to contact me. Have a great night.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.